You're partially right. Most of the Indian diaspora are upper caste and we're ready, prone to reactionary beliefs. I think that's what it is as well. This is something that I also describe to Americans all the time. If someone has immigrated into the Western world legally through legal means,
we're going to dive straight into our main story tonight, which concerns India, the last country in the world that wants to be discussed by someone with this accent, which is why I'll be doing the rest of tonight's show in a this one instead. Everybody love at a Giovanni Oliver show. Mamma mia, buca di beppo. Everybody love that. Yeah, that's right. That's fair. That's probably right. I didn't love the way that was heading. India is in the middle of an election right now, and I do mean in the middle, because voting started several weeks ago and only just ended, with results expected on Tuesday. And it's a long process for a reason. India is the largest country in the world by population, with over 1.4 billion people. That's the equivalent of roughly 4 United States, 6 Brazils, 9 Russias, 34 Canadas, or 1.4 billion Kevins. It is a lot of people, and the sheer mechanics of setting up an election that size are mind-blowing.
By law, every voter must be within 2 kilometers, or a little more than a mile, of a polling station. To set them up, officials trek over rough and mountainous terrain and across rivers.
Taking boats, choppers, even horses, trekking through mountains deep in the Himalayas and through lion-infested jungles. Sometimes a team travels 70 kilometers to set up a booth for just one person.
That is incredible. And just imagine if workers dragged a polling place through mountains and rivers just for you, and then you forgot to vote. Oh, was that today? I'm sorry, it slipped my mind. Thanks so much for trekking through that lion-infested jungle for me.
dude, that's crazy. They do this in India. Meanwhile, in America, we're just like closing polling stations in black neighborhoods.
Oh, I'll definitely try and remember next time. Results for India's election will be announced on June 4th. And while we don't yet know who's going to win, we actually kind of do, because it's going to be Narendra Modi, who is overwhelmingly favoured to win a third term. In fact, most experts agree the only real question mark is how much will he and his party, the BJP, win by? One polling organisation found that he has an approval rating of 74%, more than any world leader they track. And for some Indians, part of Modi's appeal is the sense that under his leadership, the country's been on the rise, enjoying increased prominence on the world stage, from Biden hosting Modi for a state visit last year to the Australian Prime Minister introducing him at a packed arena in Sydney with this memorable line.
The last time I saw someone on the stage here was Bruce Springsteen, and he didn't get the welcome that Prime Minister Modi has got. Prime Minister Modi is the boss.
OK, that is some weapons-grade arse-kissing there, and also a pretty strange way of transferring titles. Yeah, Bruce Springsteen...
Hey, put some respect on Elbow. Put respect on Elbow's name, mate. He's not just a cock to India. He's a cock in American interest too, mate. And the English.
Springsteen didn't get this reaction, so you're the boss now. You also got a bigger reaction than Madonna, Luxembourg's Henri Guillaume and Lizzo. So by the transitive property, you're now Queen of Pop, the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, and 100%...
I just love saying Elbow. Elbow fucking Albanese. Elbow.
That bitch. Yet, despite Modi's popularity, there are some major causes for concern. If you're thinking, well, haven't you talked about this before? You're half right, because we've actually covered Modi twice before. Once 4 years ago, and once for our very first episode, which was, based on this photo, 200 years ago. And those episodes actually stand up pretty well. In fact, I asked my staff to pick a clip that they feel is representative, and they tell me that they found the perfect one, so go ahead and roll it. Hitler is the only one who stepped up and got it done, and for that I say, way to go, Hitler. Whoa, 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 hold on, that needs a lot more content. Fuck you for choosing that. Very basically, what we explained in those episodes is that Modi's party, the BJP, has a long history of espousing Hindu nationalism, essentially rejecting India's history as a pluralistic nation and trying to push it toward becoming an explicitly Hindu one. It's long been affiliated with a paramilitary group called the RSS, whose early leaders admired Hitler, and that, for the record, was the context for that joke. It was a pretty good Hitler joke, so good, in fact, I'm guessing even Hitler would have said, way to go, John, and please do not take that image out of context as well. We also talked about how, over the course of Modi's rise, he's chosen to be strategically quiet about his pseudo-authoritarian, pro-Hindu vision of India. But there's been a noticeable shift in his rhetoric during this election season because his speeches have started to contain overt anti-Muslim statements, like this one in which he claims that if elected, his rival political party will hand over the country's wealth to Muslims.
The earlier government said the Muslims will have the right over the resources of the country. What does this mean? This means they will gather all the wealth and give it to the people who have more children. They will distribute it among the infiltrators. Do you think your hard-earned money should be distributed to the infiltrators? Do you accept that?
That is Modi referring to India's Muslim citizens as infiltrators. And that's not the only troubling sign. The BJP's produced in...
Don't you love how fucking universal fascism is? I mean, it is the closest you will ever get to a monolithic understanding of the world. It's just, you know, sometimes the outgroup is a little different, right? Well, in many instances, it's always Muslims, but like, it's the same shit. All the way down to Adolf fucking Hitler, dude. Every single time. Same strategy. This is literally just like, substitute this with like Israeli politics. Substitute this with any number of different European right-wing politicians. Substitute this with American politicians.
Incendiary videos like this one showing a bird labelled Muslim being planted in a nest and then consuming all the funding while the other birds get nothing. And look, that's already ugly enough, but it's also coming at a time when Modi and his party have seemed increasingly comfortable threatening democratic institutions by, among other things, stifling political opposition and freedom of the press. In fact, on multiple fronts, India seems to be sliding toward authoritarianism. So given that, tonight, let's check in on Narendra Modi, what he's been doing in office and what he might do next. And let's start with why it seems so likely that he's going to be re-elected. Some of his popularity comes from the very real advances that India's made under his leadership, especially when it comes to infrastructure. He initially campaigned on issues like expanding access to sanitation and water facilities and has invested billions in a nationwide upgrade of the country's roads, railways, airports and seaports. On top of that, there have been programmes to alleviate poverty for which some citizens do thank him personally.
60% of the population benefits from Modi's food distribution scheme, which he has pledged to renew for another 5 years.
Every month they give me 5 kilos of rice and flour. If Modi is no longer the head of the country, I don't think we'll get any help, and that scares me to death. We want Modi in power, not anyone else.
Yeah, you can see why people might love him for that.
I like the framing on it is a scheme. Recep Tayyip Erdogan too, for the record. Okay? And I always try to see, there's Turks in the chat, immediately went, amına koyayım Tayyip çıktı adam. That's not a bad thing that he's doing. It's not bad when Recep Tayyip Erdogan does it. It's not bad when Modi does it. The bad shit is all the other stuff. Okay? Food distribution is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a good social safety net. It's a good social policy. And it's a very popular one. The counter to that is to promise the exact same, if not more, social safety nets and policies.
Especially since the grain literally arrives in a bag with his face on it. Which feels a little egotistical. It'd be like if Lyndon Johnson signed the Food Stamp Act of 1964 but insisted that food stamps be rebranded as Lyndon's Lucky Yum Yum vouchers. That's still a good programme, but I don't know, man, maybe turn it down a notch. And that's not the only way that Modi has tried to take credit for progress on his watch. Up until this election began, some train stations had Modi...
No, it's standard in India to call it welfare schemes. There's no negative sentiment attached to the phrase. Oh, just the framing of it wasn't negative. There's no negative connotation. Because there is a negative connotation associated with, like, that kind of welfare initiative in Turkey. Like, that is oftentimes seen as, like, buying votes, basically. That's what the opposition parties used to say, which I think is, like, weirdly neoliberal for no fucking reason because it's like anti-populist. I guess scheme only has a negative connotation in America. Okay, that makes sense. Stay scheming type shit.
Does look like that, including the wheels. And that's what he wants you to think about the next time you see one slowly rolling into a tree whenever it rains. Although, I will say, sometimes Modi's tendency to take credit for things can be a bit of a stretch.
In this promotional video, it's even suggested that he halted the war in Ukraine to ensure the safe return of his citizens.
Modi brought us home. He stopped the war, Dad.
Wait, from where?
He stopped the war?
What war? What's she talking about? Did I miss that part?
Are you completely sure about that? Because I feel like I'd remember if Modi had somehow hit pause on the war in Ukraine, like it's a call of...
Oh, wait, what? Modi stopped the war in Ukraine? Yo, dude. Yo, I'd vote for that guy. What the fuck? He did that shit. The India-Ukraine-Russia ceasefire of 2023, read a book. Dude, that's so sick. India's so good at propaganda right now. It's insane. I mean, it seems kind of crazy because I don't know if that's really good propaganda or really bad propaganda. I guess it's good propaganda if people believe it.
...of duty game, and his mom just called him for dinner. Now, a key thing Modi likes to brag about is his economic record. On his watch, India has grown to become the world's 5th largest economy. It's almost twice as big as it was, and its stock market has grown...
I would have known if Modi actually stopped the war in Ukraine because I watched So Sorry. And I did not personally see any So Sorry articles about Modi stopping the war in Ukraine.
...threefold since he took office. But those numbers only tell part of the story here. For one thing, the economy was already improving before Modi took over, so he inherited an upward trajectory. And for another, the precise measures of growth that his government cites have been called into question, with even Modi's former economic aides finding the recent growth rates of 8% announced by the government mystifying. Similarly, while he claims he's lifted millions out of poverty, as this economist points out, that comes with a massive asterisk.
So what the government has done is that it's changed how it is going to define poverty.
I saw Sock Them on Twitter compare Modi to Teddy Roosevelt in a positive light. I think you mean No Opinion, who is the #1 dick rider of BJP in India. I don't think he's a Sock Them.
It's using one multidimensional poverty measure, which is, shall we say, problematic, and which is designed to suggest that less and less people are poor. We have a very, very large number of poor, and all kinds of data are telling us that not only do we still have a very large number of income poor, but other kinds of poverty, like food poverty, may well be increasing.
Right. Anyone can get rid of all poverty if you just change the definition of poor people to something...
Wait, that's literally what isn't that what the World Bank did? Like, kind of?
Something else, like, I don't know, fire hydrants or opposite snakes. And if you're thinking, wait, so there's been substantial growth and increasing poverty at the same time, the reason is, actually, hold on, I can feel that you're getting hung up on something. Opposite snakes are just arms and legs, no face or tail. Basically, 4 legs with things on the end and a butt in the middle covered with hair. Now, if you're wondering how growth and poverty can coexist, they live in the jungle, by the way. That's where opposite snakes live, just to get ahead of any habitat questions, OK? If you're thinking that growth and... Sorry, viewers at home probably can't tell, but it's got a little bit tense in here. So, quickly, I'll address as many questions as I can. How do opposite snakes eat? Through a vertical slit on the underside. What are its known predators? Badgers, mongoose, any of those gorillas they taught sign language to, bees, man, and dolphins. Like regular snakes, opposite snakes come from eggs, but their eggs are violent. They live for 85 years, they have tongue tails. The proper collective noun is a nightmare. A nightmare of opposite snakes is hound...
Oh, God, it's so fucking long.
This capybara. Their meat's inedible, their skin's toxic, and their bones are haunted. If you have any other questions about opposite snakes, you can just go to oppositesnakes.com to learn more. Anyway, what are we talking about? Oh, that's right. If you're wondering how there's been both substantial growth and increasing poverty, that is because India's economic gains have been widely unequal. By some estimates, just 1 million people now control around 80% of India's wealth. And as they've gotten richer, much of the country has gotten poorer, even with all those bags of grain with his face on them. Under Modi, the country has fallen in the Global Hunger Index and now sits below North Korea and war-torn Sudan. And you would think that all of this would be fertile ground for Modi's critics to exploit. But It's actually hard to do that in India. For one thing, it's difficult to confront him to his face because he hasn't held a single press conference in India in the last 10 years. And the interviews that he's granted have been the exact opposite of hard-hitting.
Do you carry a purse on you? A wallet to hold your cash?
Do you have a best friend? Best friend forever? With whom you share matters of the heart?
At this age, how do you bring so much energy?
Does our Prime Minister eat mangoes? Does he cut it first or eat it with the...
Yeah, this is just like Benjamin Netanyahu or Donald Trump, really. Or Joe Biden. Just like...
stone still in.
OK, most of those questions are embarrassing softballs, but how do you eat a mango is a valid thing to ask. Mangoes are notoriously hard to peel and eat. They're basically fruit juice grenades covered in rhino skin. And it's not just me who thinks that. There are endless Reddit posts about the subject, including how the hell do you eat a mango? How the fuck do you eat a mango? Mango eaters of Reddit, what is your go-to plan of attack? And my personal favourite, how...
No, he's not a fan of BJP or Modi. He's just a fan of India's economic growth. He absolutely is a fan of BJP and Modi.
does one eat a mango without making a huge mess? With a spoon? With a knife? It's like that fruit was designed by napkin manufacturers, which received the... You do not. You accept that the mango is a delicious mess and prepare for it beforehand. Do not make the mango prepare for you. You may need a bib and moist towelettes for the process, but this is simply the way it must be. Which is excellent, because it's true.
Oh, these jokes are kind of made this episode, I'm not gonna lie.
There is just no way to eat a mango with dignity, ergo, embrace the sloppy chaos of the mango. But it is not just fawning interviews. What criticism there is of Modi often gets suppressed in India, sometimes in a pretty heavy-handed way.
Publications that have done stories critical of India's leadership, like the BBC, recently saw their offices raided on charges of tax evasion or money laundering. One of the country's most popular news channels that reported critically on the government, NDTV, had its founders raided for bank fraud.
It's true, not only were the founders of NDTV raided, but a few years later, a billionaire with close ties to Modi bought it, and its tone is now much friendlier to him. Basically, if you criticise Modi...
Dude, identical to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, literally verbatim, straight up. This is also classic, okay? You go in and you either bankrupt or destroy any like media institution, any media outlet that is like critical, even remotely critical of your administration, and then you sell the pieces off to... Oh my God, I was right. It was no opinion. The more I read about Modi, the more I think of him as India's Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah, he's not a sock dem chatter. There you go. I didn't even know that it was him, and I knew. How did I know? Pre-watch, baby. Oh God, he is like allergic to good takes, bro. He is a permanent bad take machine.
Modi, there's a pretty good chance that things are going to get very
Orban does this too, like 1 for 1. Yeah, it's typical neoliberal, capitalist, fascist playbook.
Pleasant for
authoritarian
And given
playbook.
that we're here in America, I'm honestly not too worried about Modi's goons coming after me. But on the off chance...
No Opinion is another one who like didn't know anything about Israel. And I loved watching him like learn the conflict over the course of October, only to come up with like really new and unique things. Like maybe we should sanction these guys. Like maybe we should sanction, like starting off with a wonderful prospect of a 3-state solution and then working his way down. Why do you think Indians outside of India who aren't susceptible to this type of propaganda are still staunch Modi supporters? 1, diaspora is almost always more reactionary, like almost always more reactionary than the host nation citizens that remain there, okay? This is the exact same fucking thing in Turkey. There's a meme in Turkey about Turks in diaspora in Germany not having to live under the Erdogan administration and just dick riding Erdogan into oblivion. Okay? It's because they don't experience it. With Iran, it's the same, but with Cuba, it's the same. but Turkey's a better example because like the Iran and Cuban examples are like directly people who fled the country during regime change. Whereas the Turks like that immigrated to Germany oftentimes did not immigrate because of like regime change or whatever. They just lived there. They literally just live there. They don't have to live under Erdogan's administration. And therefore, they love him. They think he's like owning the West or whatever because they're stupid. And also simultaneously don't have to like experience the economic consequences. You're partially right. Most of the Indian diaspora are upper caste and we're already prone to reactionary beliefs. I think that's what it is as well. This is something that I also describe to Americans all the time. If someone has immigrated into the Western world legally through legal means, oftentimes they were able to do so because they are already the 1% of their own country and therefore will, you know, represent their class interest. They're usually rich, myself included. You know what I mean? That's part of the reason why like Nigerians, for example, that come to the United States of America are the most well-educated and have the highest rate of higher education per capita than any other, you know, migrant group coming into the country. Because it's usually the richest people that have the capacity to immigrate into the United States of America through legal means.
Their reach does extend this far. You know what? Fucking try it. You want to try and shut us down for being critical? I dare you. Do you have any idea who I am? I'm Bill fucking Maher, and my show has been on for, holy shit, over 20 years. And if you want to take us down, take your best shot. I, Bill Maher, would welcome it. It is no wonder that India is currently ranked 159th out of 180 countries for press freedom. That is 19 places lower than when Modi first came to power. But it's not just national media. Local outlets have been targeted too. This network in Kerala was suddenly taken off the air by the government in 2020 for reasons explicitly linked to its content.
The shutdown was triggered by the channels reporting on anti-Muslim riots in Delhi in February 2020. According to the notice from the Information Ministry, Media One's coverage was biased and critical of the role of the Delhi police and of a Hindu nationalist outfit, the RSS. The ban was soon reversed, the channel back on air. But the signal was clear: fall in line or else.
Yeah, that's not good, because that crackdown creates a clear chilling effect where media outlets may well be intimidated out of criticising Modi. That could actually help explain why Hotstar, the platform that we were on in 2020, mysteriously chose to block our episode criticising Modi. And look, there are plenty of reasons to not watch this show. Depressing subject matter, too much profanity, and the very fact that the frantic pace of my talking voice causes dogs to, and this is a medical term, go nuts. Also, the show seems biased, it's too long. I prefer Jimmy Fallon, Kimmel, Colbert, Seth or James Corden. Hi, Mum, by the way. Whatever your reason, at least it's your choice, not someone else's, to not watch. What I'm saying is, meaningful criticism of Modi is scarce on TV in India. In fact, many veteran anchors who were critical of him have migrated to sites like YouTube instead.
Do anti-China people have the same smoke for India when they're anti-Muslim? Fuck no. Just like, dude, you have to understand, the anti-China position coming from the Western world almost always is just resentment towards another developed superpower that they are in an existential battle against. Of course they don't have that same smoke for India. Just like the very same people that say, like, Hamas are Islamist fundamentalists, they're backwards, they throw gays off roofs, have no fucking opinion on any of the Gulf states that they that the American government is aligned with, because, you know, those guys are the good guys. Neither of which are throwing gays off roofs, by the way, but it doesn't matter. Like, the same Islamophobic sentiments do not exist for our friends in the Gulf.
But the government may soon be able to help heavily regulate digital media too. It's pushing a law which could mean that anyone making social commentary online would have to adhere to advertising and programme codes prescribed by the government. Meanwhile, an amendment is working its way through the courts which would establish a fact-check unit allowing the government to identify fake news about itself and order it to be taken down. And I actually have a lead for that fact-check unit. Check out the batshit claim that Modi stopped the war in Ukraine, because there's a weird video going around that you should probably get taken down. And it's not just the press who found it hard to take on Modi. The same goes for his political opposition. He's currently facing off against a coalition called the Indian National Developmental Inclusive Alliance, or India for short, a monumentally weak name for a coalition. The first I in India stands for Indian. It'd be like if the H in HBO stood for HBO, which it obviously doesn't. It stands for Hank, Hank's box office. The India coalition is led by the Congress Party, the face of which is Rahul Gandhi. And while his party never stood a realistic chance of challenging Modi, even so, its campaign has been significantly hampered by the fact that just weeks before this year's election began, tax agencies moved to freeze their bank accounts. And on the same day that that was announced, the head of one of India's other opposition parties was arrested. And look, those could be just more lucky, complete coincidences for Modi, except...
Is Modi going to win? Well, newsflash, he did, but not by the margins of victory that everyone thought he was going to win by. So it is seen as a bit of a defeat, as a matter of fact, because he couldn't maintain majority.
For the fact that over the years, multiple politicians who've opposed the BJP have found themselves facing charges of fraud or financial malfeasance, only for those charges to suddenly stall or be dropped when they switch parties and join the BJP instead. There's even a term for this, the washing machine, where supposedly dirty politicians come out clean once they switch sides. And it is a completely open secret there.
One opposition politician who joined the BJP in 2022 let the cat out of the bag when he said he sleeps easier now that he's a member of the ruling party.
I also had to switch to the BJP. Now I'm stress and tension-free. All is good. No official inquiries, no investigation, and I can sleep peacefully. I'm tension-free.
Wow! It is so universally understood. Everyone in that audience laughed, and laughed so hard. Honestly, I'm a little bit jealous. It kind of makes me wonder if I should have spent our last show admitting to political corruption instead of... What were we talking about? Wait, corn? I did 25 minutes on fucking corn? And people watched it? What exactly is this show? But in general, and to put it mildly, it seems good to be on Modi's good side and very, very bad to be on his bad side. And that brings us back to his attacks on Muslims. As I mentioned earlier, he and his party are adherents to Hindu nationalism, or Hindutva. It used to be a fringe ideology, but is now mainstream, and it's been said nobody has done more to advance this cause than Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And Muslims, as India's largest religious minority, have borne the brunt of this. Early this year, Modi famously opened an over $200 million Hindu temple, showing up personally to help consecrate it, which might seem benign until you learn that temple was built on the former site of this mosque that was demolished by a Hindu mob in 1992 in an incident that set off riots reportedly killing over 2,000 people, most of them of tremendous pain for Indian Muslims. And the symbolism of opening a temple on that exact spot has been called the crowning achievement of a national movement aimed at establishing Hindu supremacy in India. But the damage here isn't just symbolic. In the climate that Modi stoked...
Bro, India is so massive. It's like 2,000 is like the tiniest pogrom. By Indian standards.
Muslims have been lynched by Hindu mobs over allegations of eating beef or smuggling cows, an animal considered holy to Hindus. And then there's been this.
Muslim-owned buildings are literally being bulldozed in what the government calls a crackdown on illegal construction and accused criminals, a brand of bulldozer justice all too common in India.
That is awful, and it's happening so much now that bulldozer justice has become a commonly used term. In fact, the bulldozer itself has become a Hindu nationalist symbol, and it's been featured during election victories and in political rallies. This hardline BJP leader has even earned the nickname Bulldozer Baba, and there's now a whole new genre of Hindu nationalist pop songs, or H-pop, as it's also known, with bulldozers appearing front and centre, including this one, which, if you knew nothing else about it, would honestly sound pretty good. I hate what she's saying, but the way she's saying it is undeniably catchy. All that bulldozer video really needed was Bob the Builder shaking his ass to it. Oh, I'm sorry, did you not know about Bob? There were 2 dump trucks on that show, and the biggest one was in his overalls.
I mean, this is straight Israel shit, bro. What the fuck? Across the board, all the way down to the bulldozers and what they're bulldozing.
While Muslims are a minority in India, there are still 200 million of them, the equivalent of nearly 2/3 of the United States. And with anti-Muslim hate speech and violence on the rise, it is no wonder many are feeling increasingly targeted and in incredibly grim ways.
Muslim shopkeeper Shamsher Ali feels like he's being pushed out.
Anything can happen at any point. That is the amount of hate now.
Violence against Muslims is on the rise. A Delhi police officer was caught on camera last month kicking a group of Muslim men praying by the side of the road. The video went viral. The officer suspended. Another police officer arrested for killing 3 Muslims on a train, praising the prime minister while standing over their bodies.
Yeah. And it's worth remembering that is not a bug of Modi's leadership, it is a feature. So given all of this, what can we do? Well, for those of us who don't live in India, nothing really. Also, asking a British person what should we do about India is a little bit dangerous, as we tend to have quite a lot of ideas, none of which should be listened to. But as an international community, it seems past time to stop the uncritical, fawning praise of a man who is, to put it mildly, a deeply complicated figure. So maybe we could at least stop comparing him to Bruce Springsteen. And when you talk about what he's done for India, at least acknowledge that while, yes, he's responsible for giving bags of grain to people, he's also responsible for some getting sent bulldozers. And it should be possible to acknowledge the good things that Modi's managed to do for India, while acknowledging that many Indians live in active fear of what he seems more than happy to represent. And I know that this episode is almost definitely not going to end up airing in India, and depending on what they do with the laws around YouTube, I'm not totally sure what'll happen to it there either. So if this show does get taken down, and if you have friends or family living in India who would like to see it, just encourage them to visit OppositeSnakes.com, where they'll find tons of fascinating facts on opposite snakes, as well as a 25-minute video titled Opposite Snakes, which is, in fact, this entire story. Alternatively, you can send them to HowToEatMangoes.com, which features this video promising tips in Hindi on mango eating technique, but is, again, this entire story instead. And if any of Modi's people take offence at this, let me just repeat, I'm not remotely scared of you. In fact, I'll meet you and your stupid bulldozers in front of this studio right here in Los Angeles, or my name is not Bill Maher, which it very much is.
You got to give them credit for the lameish bits now.